We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Zayin Amud Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 67b. On the previous summit, the Gemara explained the opinion of Rabbi Yoshua in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yoshua holds, let's say you have an Ola Sa'of, a bird carbon Ola, and you bring that bird carbon Ola and you do the procedure on the lower half of the Mizbeach, and you do it for the sake of a bird carbon Chatas, and you do it with the procedure of a bird Chatas, so then it actually changes into a bird carbon Chatas. That's what Rabbi Yoshua said on the previous summit, and Rabbi Yoshua was saying that in the context of Me'ilah. Rabbi Yoshua held, since we know by a bird Chatas there's no Me'ilah because it's permitted to be eaten by the Kohanim, so therefore it converted into a bird Chatas, and therefore there is no Me'ilah. That was Rabbi Yoshua's opinion. The Gemara in the previous Amud assumed that Rabbi Yoshua would also say that it fully becomes a bird Chatas in such a situation. It's a Chatas Ha'of, even to the extent that it fulfills the owner's obligation, the one who's bringing the carbon's obligation. And so the Gemara continues and says, Tashma, come in here, a proof with regards to that from the following Mishnah in Meseches Kinim. The Mishnah says, Chatas lazu va'ola lazu, a Chatas for this one and an Ola for this one. We'll see Rashi. Asa shteyan lamala, if both of them, both of the birds are done on the upper part of the Mizbeach, mechsa kosher or mechsa pasel, half will be kosher and half will be pasel, be disqualified. Shteyan lamata, let's say they're both done below, mechsa kosher or mechsa pasel, again, half will be kosher, half will be disqualified. Achas lamala v'achas lamata, if one is done above and one is done below, shteyan psulos, they're both disqualified. Shani Omer, because I say, chatos karva lamala, maybe the chatos was brought on the upper half of the Mizbeach incorrectly, viola karva lamata, and the ola was brought on the lower part of the Mizbeach incorrectly, and so therefore they are both disqualified. And so the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yoshua, Nihi nami do ola karva lamata, even if you're going to say, granted that the ola was brought on the lower half of the Mizbeach, but it didn't, Rabbi Yoshua say, timshoch v'tehave chatas ha'of, that it should now convert into a chatas ha'of, and so therefore at the very least that should fulfill the obligation of the owner in this case. And the Gemara answers to that, Amor Dam Rabbi Yoshua Bechad Gavra. Rabbi Yoshua, maybe he said what he said by one individual, but in this Mishnah in Kinim, Betray Gavri, it's talking about two individuals. Mi Amar, would he say it over there? And therefore, you cannot ask a question from this Mishnah in Kinim on Rabbi Yoshua. And Rashi explains, Chatos lazu va'ola lazu, Mishnah hiba Meseches Kinin. This is a Mishnah Meseches Kinim. Well, kamona amrinon stam Kinin Rabbi Yoshua hi. Now we're going to say later on that in general, the unattributed Mishnayos in Meseches Kinin are Rabbi Yoshua. That's why we're assuming that we can ask this question from this Mishnah on Rabbi Yoshua's opinion. Chatos lazu, so the case over here is again a Chatos for this one and an Ola for this one. The case is as follows. Rachel shahaisa tzricha Chatos lilei dasa. Rachel needs to bring a Chatos because she gave birth. Violasa kvar karva, and in terms of her ola, her bird ola, that was already brought. V'leah haisatricha ola. Now Leah, she needs to bring an ola. Shekvar karva chatasa. She already brought her chatas. So each woman needs to bring one of the two karbanos. V'lokchu kain be'erev, and so then they buy this nest, this pair of birds. They buy together. V'kavu preida achas lechatas Rachel, and one bird is going to be used for the chatas of Rachel. Upreida achas leolas Leah, and then one of the birds is supposed to be used for the ola requirement of Leah. Unisanam lekohen, and they give it to the kohen. And so then the case over here is that they get mixed up. So asa shtei and lamala. So let's say both of them are done lamala. They're both done on the upper half of the mizbeach l'shem ola, for the sake of an ola. So then mechsa ksheru, mechsa psula. Half will be kosher and half will be pasul. Meaning to say ola ksheru, the ola is going to be kosher. The chadas psula, and the chadas will be pasul. And so therefore, the one who needed to bring an ola, so she's going to have fulfilled her obligation. The one who needed to bring a chatas will not. But the question of the Gemara was, let's say again you have a situation where one was brought lamala, one lamata, so we say they're both pasul because maybe they were both brought wrong. But the question is, according to Rabbi Yoshua, the ola should actually become a chatas, so the chatas should at least be fulfilled. Timshach v'teitze yedei chovasa mimanavshach, she should be able to fulfill her obligation mimanavshach. Either way, im chatasa karva lamata, if it was her chatas brought below, hare tov, so that's good. V'im lav, and if not, hare olas chaverta karva lamata, the ola of her friend was brought below. V'naas is chatas, it becomes a chatas. V'chaverta eina tzrichola, and her friend doesn't need that chatas, so that should work for her chatas. And so the Gemara answered, Betray Gavri Meyamar, you can't say it by two individuals. Heich karbona shel zu yala lazu, how could the carbon of this one work for this person? She'ein la chelak bo, she has no portion in that carbon, and so that's why obviously Rabbi Yoshua would not be able to say it fulfills the obligation in this case. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, another proof from a Mishnah in Kinim. Chatos v'ola, let's say you have a situation of a bird chatos, a bird ola, ustuma, and then you have a pair that's unspecified, umefureshes, and then you have a pair that's specified. Again, Rashi will explain. Also, kulon lamal, if all of them are done on the upper part of the Mizbeach. So again, mechsa kosher umechsa pasel. Half will be kosher, half will be pasel. Kulon lamat, if they're all done on the lower half. So then mechsa kosher umechsa pasel. Half will be kosher, half will be pasel. Chetzion lamala v'chetzion lamata. Let's say half are done above, half are done below. So eino ksheira ela stuma. The only ones that are going to be kosher is the unspecified pair. Umischalekes beinein, will be divided up between them. V'ilu mufurashin lo. And so it seems like the Mishnah is saying that the specified pair is not going to be kosher. V'amai. So again, the Gemara asks a similar question. Why should that be true according to Rabbi Yoshua? Nehinami da'ola karva lamata. Even if we grant that it was the ola that was brought on the lower half of the Mizbeach incorrectly, timshoch v'tahave chatosof. Again, it should turn into a chatosof, and it should at least satisfy the obligation of the chatos. V'chiteiman, if you're going to say hadalok Rabbi Yoshua, that this Mishnah doesn't follow Rabbi Yoshua, umi matzasamar hachi, but can you really say that? And the Gemara now will go on and show that again the Mishnayos here in Kinin are following Rabbi Yoshua. And Rashi explains chatos v'ola stuma mefureshes asa kulan lamala mechsa kosher umechsa pasel, kulan lamata mechsa kosher umechsa pasel, chetzion lamala v'chetzion lamata in kosher elastuma mischalekes beinei. And again, that's the girsa of the Mishnah. Hachi garsinon lo b'Meseches Kinin. This is the text in Meseches Kinin. Shtei nashim shalakhu gimel kinin be'erev. The case over here is you have two women, and the two women are buying three pairs together in terms of pairs of birds for bird karbanos. Zu tzricha ola v'kan shalem. This one she still needs to bring an ola, and she also needs to bring a pair, meaning echad chatos v'echad ola. She needs to bring a chatos and an ola. Dehainu shtei olos v'chatos, meaning she needs to bring two olos and a chatos. That is her current obligation. V'zu tzricha shtei chatos v'ola. Now the other one needs the reverse. She needs two chatoses and an ola. Upershu echad min hakinim preda ola lazu upreda chatos lazu. Now they already specified one of the pairs. This bird is going to be an ola for this one. This bird is going to be a chatos for that one. V'echad min hakinim hinichu stuma. Now one of them was unspecified. Lo pershu eza preda chatos ve'eza preda ola. They didn't explain which one's a chatos and which one's an ola. V'hagimel pershu preda zu ola upreda zu chatos. And then the third pair, they said that this one's an ola and this one's a chatos. Avol shemos bailam lo nisparshu. But they didn't explain which owner it goes to. So now hare chatos lazu v'ola lazu. So now we have a chatos for this one and ola for this one. V'kan stum, and then you have one pair which is unspecified. V'kan mefureshes, and then you have another pair that's specified. So tzarech lahakriv beis hakinim halalu. So what are you going to need to do? You're going to need to take these two pairs of birds, stam al shtehen ha'olos lamala v'chatos lamata. You're going to have to say that the olas are done above and the chatos below. V'chatos lazu v'ola lazu, and the chatos will be for this one, the ola for this one. Tzarech lahakriv l'shem bailam. Those ones you're going to have to be, meaning the ones that were specified, you have to bring it for the proper owner, unesanim l'kohen, and give it to the kohen. And so Rashi continues, the Mishnah said, Asa kulan lamala, let's say you take all the birds and he does them all on the upper half of the Mizbeach, meaning kasavar kulan olos, he made a mistake, he thought they're all olos. So then mechsa kosher, mechsa pasel, half of them will be kosher, and half pasel, because at the end, if you add it all up, there was a requirement of 3 olos and 3 chatoses over here. So kol ha-chatos psulos, all the chatos will be disqualified. Utzrichos lavi kol chatos shalein, so they're all going to have to bring their chatos. Kulan lamata, let's say you make a mistake and you do them all below, kasavar kulan chatos, you think they're all chatos. So again, mechsa kosher, mechsa pasel, half will be kosher, half pasel, kol ha-olos psulos, all the olos will be disqualified. Utzrichos lavi kol olos shalein, you're going to have to bring all of the olos. Now chetzion lamala, let's say you do half of them above and half of them below, so ein kosher bekulan elo kan stuma, the only one that's going to be kosher is your unspecified pair. Dehai minayu david ola, v'hai minayu david chatos ksher, because since it was unspecified, so whichever one you did as an ola and whichever one you did as a chatos will be kosher over there, since it was unspecified. Tikinim lo nisparshu, belakichas bailim lo misparshos shuv elabasias kohen, because when you have a pair, when the owner bought that pair of birds and didn't specify, so at that point it becomes specified by what the kohen does. Kagon depshita le dechol kan v'kan hoya b'fnei atzmo umikol kan echad asa echad lamala v'echad lamata. Again, you have a situation where he knows that each pair on its own shown what that pair is, and so from each one he's going to do one above and one below. So in such a situation, that actually is essentially going to be designated by the Kohen. If the Kohen knows that this was the pair of birds and it was unspecified, so whichever one he chooses to do above will be the Ola, whichever one he chooses to do below will be the Chatos. And it's divided among them. Since they bought everything together, so we'll say that one of the women will fulfill her Chatos and one will fulfill her Ola. So they'll have to buy another pair together, and then they'll have to just bring with a condition. If the first Ola was Rachel's and the Chatos was Leah, so now in this second pair, this one will be an Ola for Leah and a Chatos for Rachel. If it's the opposite, then we'll do the opposite. Now the point over here is that the ones that were specified, meaning they specified which was the Ola and which was the Chatos, even though they didn't specify exactly in terms of the Bailim, so there it's not going to be kosher even one of the birds. And so Rashi continues, the Gemara asks, V'amai, why should that be the case? B'shlama chatas v'ola shayu mefurashim l'shem bailim. Now I understand, if you have the bird chatas and bird ola, that it was specified for which owner, so lo kashal, and that's not difficult, to have lu trei gavri, because that's two separate individuals, you can't bring it for the wrong individual. Elakan mefureshes, but if you have a pair of birds which was specified, shalo haisa mefureshes l'shem bailim, but was not specified which goes to which owner, ela ezu prei the chatas ve'ezu ola, you simply know which one is a chatas, which one is an ola. So ben shteihen hayabeir, but they were both bought together. So amai psula osa preda shenasis lamata k'maaseh chatas l'shem chatas. Why should the bird that was below done with the procedure of chatas for a chatas? Why should it be disqualified? Nehi nami deola havoy hoil v'karvo lamata timoshech v'tahav chatas. Even if it was the ola, but it should turn into a chatas. V'lo yutzrichos lavi be'erav ela ola achas. So then they should only need to bring together one ola. V'yomer, and then they'll say im olas kan hastuma l'rochel. If the Ola of the Kan Stuma of the unspecified one was for Rachel, Tezu Laleah, this will be for Leah. Vimhi Laleah, Tezu L'Rachel, and if it was for Leah, then this will be for Rachel. That's all they should have to do. Again, if we held like Rabbi Yoshua, if you're going to say that this doesn't follow Rabbi Yoshua, can you really say that? Tekin and Lav Rabbi Yoshua, can you really say that Meseches Kinim over here, the Mishnayos, are not Rabbi Yoshua, as the Gemara now goes on to explain? And the Gemara continues again, can you really say that the Mishnayos in Kinan are not following Rabbi Yoshua? Tashma, come here, the following proof from a Mishnah in Kinan. Ha'isha she'amr, if a woman says, Hareo laikein im eiled zachar, she says, I'm going to give a pair of birds if I give birth to a boy. Yolda zachar, if she gives birth to a boy, mevia shtei kinim, so she has to bring two pairs. Achas lenidra, one as a fulfillment of her vow. V'achas lechovas, and one of them as a fulfillment of her obligation since she gave birth. And Rashi explains, Tashma, coming here, the Kinan, Rabbi Yoshua, coming here a proof that Meseches Kinan is Rabbi Yoshua. The Tanan b'seifa the Meseches Kinan, because we learn the Mishnah over there at the end in Meseches Kinan. Ha'isha she'amra v'katani seifa, it's going to say at the end, Amar Rabbi Yoshua zeu she'amra, as we're going to quote. Rabbi Yoshua is going to make a statement, and the point is, Al Mustama de Kinan, Rabbi Yoshua. The point of bringing all of this is to show that the unattributed Mishnayos in Kinan are Rabbi Yoshua. So again, she says, Harei lekein v'achas lechovasa, so she's going to have to bring one to fulfill her neder, and one pair to fulfill her obligation, l'leidasa, in terms of the fact that she gave birth. And the Mishnah continues, Nisan nasan l'kohen, when she gives these birds to the Kohen, ha-Kohen sarech la'asosan shalosh lamala, the Kohen's going to need to do 3 of the birds above the red line on the upper half of the Mizbeach, v'achas lamat, and one of them is going to be below. In other words, it's going to be 3 olas and 1 chatos. Rashi explains, shalosh lamalan v'achas lamaton, the nidra shtei olos, because that vow that she made, that was really 2 olos. V'chovasa, but when it comes to the obligation for the fact that she gave birth, achas liola v'achas l'chatos, one of them is an ola, and one of them is a chatas. And so again, in this case, what's supposed to happen is 3 are olas, and 1 is a chatas. And so the Mishnah continues, lo asakain, let's say the Kohen didn't do that, he didn't realize what was going on. Elo asa shtayim lamala ubeis lamata, let's say he did 2 above, so he did 2 olos instead of 3, and then he did 2 below. Velo nimlach, he didn't consult her, so then what is she going to need to do? Tzricha shatavi od preda achas, she's going to need to bring another bird, v'takrivena lamala, she's going to have to bring it above, meaning on the upper half of the Mizbeach, because again, she's missing 1 ola in this situation. And Rashi explains, Asa shtaim lamalo shtaim lamata kasavar shtei hakinin chov oleh. The Kohen thought that both the pairs were actually for an obligation. Shema yoledes bezov haisa, maybe she was yoledes bezov. Huzkaka lekan leda v'kan ziva, maybe she was ziva at all. She had a flow which caused an obligation to have to bring a pair of birds, and so that's why he thought he had these two obligations, a kan leda and a kan ziva. That's what he misunderstood. V'lo nimlach baladas al mahav, and he never consulted her to find out what she was bringing these birds for. And so again, the Mishnah said that in that situation, she needs to bring od preda achas, another bird, v'takri vena lamal, and she has to bring it on the upper half of the mizbeach, because she still needs to bring an ola. And the Mishnah continues and says, that's mimin echad, that's true if it's all of one species. Umishnei minin, but if it's of two species, tavi shtayim, then she brings two. And Rashi explains, tzricha shetavi od preda achas, v'takri venu lamala mimin echad, umishnei minin tavi shtayim. Rashi explains, kilomar, what the Mishnah means to say is as follows. Im harishona min echad hayu. Let's say at first they were one species, meaning shnei hakinin torin, or shnei and bnei yona. Let's say both of the pairs of birds, they're both torin, meaning they're both doves, or they're both bnei yona, they're both pigeons. So then tavi od preda achas may also hamin. So then she could just bring another bird from the same species, laola, and she'll bring it as an ola because she's missing an ola. V'yotzta yedei hakol, and then she'll fulfill everything. Shemikan shehikriv hakohen rishon yotzta yedei leidasa, from the pair that the Kohen brought first, so that takes care of her obligation that she gave birth. Shari l'shem chova karav, because he brought it thinking that it was for the obligation. V'hasheni nishar l'nidra, and so then the second one, that remained for her neder, for her vow. V'nifsal goes alechon mehen b'asiyas mata. Now one of them was done asiyas mata, one of those was done below the red line on the lower half of the mizbeach, so that obviously is disqualified. V'harezeh yeh tachtav, and so this one will be in its place. V'im harishona mishnei minin, but the Mishnah is now saying that's all true again if it's all from the same species. But let's say there were two different species, meaning hayukan torim v'kan bnei yona. Let's say there was one pair of torim and one bnei yona, one pair of doves, one pair of pigeons. So then tavi shtayim tor uvnei yona. So then she's actually going to need to bring two birds. She's going to need to bring a dove and a pigeon. V'yakriv shneihen lamal, and she'll have to bring both of them on the upper half of the mizbeach. Again, in this situation as well, she still is missing one of the olos, but in this situation she doesn't really know in terms of what type of animal. Mishum de mesafkolon ezekan mishnayim harishonim karav achron, because we don't know which one was brought last from the two pairs. V'have lenidra, and which one of them really is for the vow. V'nifsal mimenu goes alechat, so we don't know which one of them is the one that one of the birds is disqualified from. Utzricha lahashlima may also hamin, and the halacha is that if you're going to have to make up that obligation, it has to be the same species. The Tanan b'Meseches Kinim, that's what we learn in the Mishnah in Kinim. Ein mevi'in tor keneged ben yona. You can't bring a tor corresponding to a ben yona. V'lo ben yona keneged tor. You can't bring a ben yona corresponding to a tor. And so that's why in this situation she's actually going to need to bring both birds. And the Mishnah continues and says, Persha Nidra, let's say she specifies her vow, meaning she vows to bring two bird olos, but of a specific kind of bird, again, either dove or pigeon, and she doesn't remember which. So then, Srichel Havi Od Gimel Paredin, then she's going to need to bring another three birds, Mimin Echad, if the first group of birds that she brought was from one species, Umi Beis Minin, and if it was from two species, then Tavi Dalit, she'll actually need to bring four birds, and Kava Nidra, if she fixed her neder. And Rashi explains, Persha Nidra means as follows. Kishin Nodra, when she made the neder, Harei Alai Kain, that she said she's going to bring a pair of birds, Persha Esamin Shatavi, Ve'eni Yodas Ma Persha. She explained what kind of birds, but she doesn't remember what she said. Im Torim im Bnei Yona, she doesn't know if she was going to bring doves or pigeons. V'hi Sana Shnei Kinin L'Kohen, and then she went ahead and she gave the two pairs to the Kohen. Again, the first case we're going to address is she gave one kind of bird to the Kohen, two pairs, all the same kind of bird. Kida Amrinan, as we said, V'yasa Achas Lamala, V'yachas Lamata, and he did one above and one below. Again, he thought these were both obligations, and so over here he did it two olas, and then he did two chatases, and so she still has an obligation of one more ola. So tzricha lahavi od gimel predin, so now she's going to need to bring another three birds, lamala, and she's going to have to do them all on the upper half of the mizbeach, mimin echad, and that's all true if, again, let's say all of the birds were brought from one species. So, for example, let's say she brought four doves, and she intended that three of them would be olas and one of them would be a chatas. chatas. Instead, what he did was 2 olas and 2 chatases. So now she owes an ola. And again, what she brought was doves. So you're going to have to bring 1 dove and do it as an ola. That's certainly true. That's to make up for the dove that was disqualified. But then you're also going to have to bring another 2 pigeons to do as olas, because maybe what she vowed was actually pigeons. That's why it needs to be 3. Umishnei, and now let's say what happened was that she actually brought from two species, meaning to say, let's say she brought 2 doves and 2 pigeons in this situation. So then tavi arba. So then she actually needs to bring 4 more birds. Why? Since she specified the kind of bird, but she doesn't know what she said. So originally she really needs to bring 3 pairs. Shnayim linidra. She's really, meaning from the outset, let's say she, at the beginning, was done properly, she would have had to bring 3 pairs of birds. She's going to need to bring 2 for her vow, because again, she owes 2 olas, but she doesn't know what kind of bird, so she's going to have to bring 2 olas of doves and 2 olas of pigeons. Echad min hatorim v'echad min b'nei Yonah. Again, 1 from doves and 1 from pigeons, to halo yada man nadr, because she doesn't even know what she vowed. V'ashlishi l'chovas, and now the third one, that's just for her obligation, because she gave birth, so that's me'ezah min shatir, so that could be from any species, it doesn't matter. V'hi'e v'ya shnayim. Now what did she do? She went ahead and she brought 2 different kinds of species. V'kar of harishon l'chovasa. Now the first set of birds, that was brought for her obligation. V'nishar hasheni l'nidra. And so now the second one, she's using that for her neder. V'nifsal heimenu goes alechad. And of that second one of the birds was disqualified because it was done on the wrong place of the mizbeach. So Hilgach therefore as follows. Im mimin echad hayu harishonim. Let's say all of them that she brought initially, they were all from the same species. So tzricha shatavi echad may also hamin lahashlim hanifsal. She'll need to bring 1 more of that species to make up for the disqualified bird. V'kan shalem imin acher, and then she'll need to bring another pair from the other species. Mishum delo yadam apirsha, because she doesn't know what kind of bird she vowed to bring. V'im shnei minim hayu. Now let's say they were 2 species. So now tzricha shatavi dalit. She's going to need to bring 4 more birds. V'kulan olos, and they're all going to be olos. And the reason for that is Mishum de Mesafkalon, because here we have a doubt. Eizamin Karav Achron, we don't know which species was brought last. Shetzricha lahashla me'oso hamin gozel hanifsal, because she's going to need to bring from that same species whichever bird was disqualified. Ulahavi kan shalim imin acher, and then she needs to bring another pair from the other species. Sharei ena yodas im tzricha toru shnei b'nei Yonah, o ben Yonah shtei torim. She doesn't know in this situation whether she needs a dove and 2 pigeons or a pigeon and 2 doves. Lafikach tavi shtei. So therefore, she's going to actually have to bring 2 doves and 2 pigeons. And she'll say, one of these, which is from whatever one was disqualified, this will be the substitute. And the second one will just be a donation. And then the second pair, that's going to take care of the doubt, because she doesn't know exactly what she explained. And then finally, the last case of the Mishnah, kava nidra, if she fixed her neder, what that means is lahavia im chovasa. She said she's going to bring whatever she vowed together with the one of obligation. She'amr, that she said, Hareo laikan lahavio im chovasi. Whatever I'm bringing together with my obligation. Upershaso ve'ena yodas ma persha, and she specified what she was going to bring, but she doesn't know what she specified. Kedamrin, as we said, ve'hevia shteikin, and again she brought 2 pairs. Unasanasan l'kohen, she gave it to the kohen. V'yasa kamo shamarnu, and he did exactly what we said above. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Sameches Amid Aleph.